Hi, my name is Paul Gore with the Asian Chamber of Commerce, Director of Community Development for the Houston area. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we're excited to have a wonderful webinar to provide you necessary information for the most recent legislation that could help your business. We're a chamber that's been serving the Houston business community for over 30 years. Our mission is to foster economic and business development opportunities for you. And with programs like this, you're here today, and hope that what we provide actually will be helpful in understanding the recent infrastructure bill that was passed through Congress and signed by the president to help your business and our whole economic landscape here in Houston. And even more so around the US. But before we continue with today's event, I'm going to have some opening remarks from our board chair-elect as well as our national partner. First, I want to have Kenneth Lee, board chair-elect, to say a few words. Could you please open your mic, Kenneth, and please be able to say a few words.
Sure. Thank you, Paul. Hi, everybody. I think good afternoon. First of all, I want to thank you, our sponsor, and also, of course, the SBA. We have a pleasure and the honor to have the District Director, Tim Jeffcoat, to give more detail about this good news. I heard there's a lot of money, but I think Tim could announce how much money that will be. I wish we have a very successful meeting today. And also, I want to congratulate and thank you because I just got the good news is Asian Chamber's name is one of the largest chamber in the Greater Houston area by the Houston Business Journal. I want to thank you, our directors and our chair, being you, and all the board members did a wonderful job. Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. And then next we have Janet Paula, who represents National ACE, who's also our partner, to say a few words. Janet.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much for having us today. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Janet Alec-Pala. I'm the Program and Business Development Director for the National Asian Pacific Islander American Chamber of Commerce and Entrepreneurship. That's why we're also known as National ACE. We're purposefully located in Washington, D.C., and we're proud to serve as an advocate for over 2 million AAPI small businesses across the country. And we're honored to be part of today's discussion on the newly passed infrastructure bill and how small businesses can benefit with projects and opportunities. I also want to take the time to thank our colleagues Paul Gore, Barbara Gallo, Bin Yu, Board-elect Chair Kenneth Lee, SBA Director Tim Jeffcoat, and for everyone working on activating this webinar series for our AAPI Business Network. This partnership is very important between ACC Houston and National ACE because we are invested in getting our businesses back on track through our AAPI Strong initiative. And we're accomplishing that goal to help small business owners have access to as many resources and services offered at a national, federal, and local level. This past year, the pandemic and anti-AAPI sentiment have had a major impact on our AAPI business community, and National ACE was called upon to speak for the AAPI entrepreneurs, small business owners, even corporate executives, to let policymakers know about our community's true devastation. Although our community still faces these acts of discrimination, and despite the recent decrease in media coverage, the number of reported anti-AAPI crimes is higher than ever, even as the national number of reported hate crimes has dropped. When our organization was called to speak on behalf of the business community, National ACE took every opportunity to share these challenging experiences with corporate leaders, government leaders, and media outlets. And as expected, each group we communicated with was shocked, saddened, and distressed, and wanted to know every way they could to activate and help immediately. We're very pleased to report on a national level that many of the corporations and organizations have stepped up to provide necessary funding to get our initiative off the ground, but our work has just begun. So our AAPI Strong program is being activated here in Houston through our strong network of partners like AACC Houston, and we hope many of you will be inspired to partner with us more closely on this initiative. With that, we want to thank everyone for this opportunity to talk about National ACE. If you have any questions and like to learn more about our initiative from a policy advocacy standpoint or a program initiative, please feel free to reach us at info@nationalace.org. I will put that in the chat. And you can check out our website at www.nationalace.org. With that, thank you so much, and I'll hand it back over to Paul.
Thank you, Janet. We appreciate our partnership. And just to be able to just kind of give you some I guess, up-to-date information about our chamber. Just so you know, tomorrow we're having our annual meeting. This is our annual big celebration as a holiday luncheon. We'll be also honoring our outgoing board chair, Ben Yu, and his service for the community, and just have a wonderful time to celebrate and to see old faces. This is our actually first luncheon of the year, and only luncheon, unfortunately, but we'll be gearing up for 2022. So we hope that you can join us tomorrow at 11 a.m. At the Sheraton Brook Hollow in the northwest side of Houston. Following that, on Friday, we'll have our orientation for those who are interested in becoming members. It's a free way to understand how our Asian Chamber membership will benefit you and really help you grow your organization. So with that, I'm just going to have Tim Jeffcoat. Oh, actually, before I do that, I wanted to just give you some housekeeping items. During the presentation, we'll be muting all and disabling all your mics. So please feel free to submit your questions at the Q&A chat box. We'll be addressing those questions at the end of the presentation. Please, please, please pay close attention to this whole presentation. That this will be wonderful resources for you and how to really maximize your opportunities with this whole new initiative of the Infrastructure Bureau. If you're representing press, please disconnect now. This is a webinar for small business owners and those who are looking at growing their business here. Please contact the Asian Chamber office for direct information if you are looking to be able to talk to someone about this. So today, without further ado, I want to invite Tim Jeffcoat, District Director of the Houston SBA office, which is our good friend and supporter, to be able to talk about this topic that's pressing and to be able to just give an inside look of what and how small business can take advantage of this whole thing. So Tim, would you be able to go ahead and start it off, turn on the cameras, and just be able to go away? Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, Paul. Let me get my screen shared here and make sure we can see. Okay, Paul, if you can just confirm that that is displaying now.
Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Very good. Very good. So good morning, or rather good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Tim Jeffcoat with the Small Business Administration, and I want to thank the Asian Chamber for asking me to do this. This is a really timely topic because at this point in time, you're able to get ahead of what's going to be happening with this act. So here's what I'm going to go over today, and I am going to do it pretty quickly, and you will get copies of these slides. If you ask Paul nicely, he will send them to you. So I'm going to give you just a little bit of background about my office in case you're unfamiliar on how we help small businesses. Then I'll go over this Infrastructure and Jobs Act. I'm going to talk about the total project, what we think is going to happen in Texas, how this federal money gets distributed, and then most importantly, how you might be able to participate. So let me go ahead and kick off with my office. So we're in Southeast Texas, 32 counties around Houston. You can see the map there of our coverage area. And it's important for you to note what is a small business. A small business is a manufacturing or processing type firm, such as a refinery, up to 1,500 employees, or a service-oriented firm like software publishing or trash collection, up to $41.5 million in revenue. What that boils down to is that in the Houston area, 99.5% of all businesses are considered small. So in my district, it's a little over 750,000 businesses. So that's who we work for, and we offer services and programs in 4 categories. We call them the 4 C's: capital, counseling, contracting, and then crisis. So when it comes to capital, we have programs that essentially we co-sign on a loan for your business. We guarantee it to the bank to make them more interested in lending to you, a small business. In the last year, if you just focus on the bottom line there, $1.5 billion, that's with a B, of loans here just in my district. When it comes to counseling, we have a broad range of partners that are available to you at no charge, and I will talk to you many times through this webinar, about 250 of them here in the Houston area to help you. But I've got a team at my office that is focused on outreach and talking to you and talking to people like the Asian Chamber. And in the beginning of COVID, they switched to doing most of what they do online, just like we are right now. And in that time frame, this very, very busy screen you see is telling you that they've done 1,523 webinars for about 133,000 people. The average webinar was 87 folks. And they do this constantly. They were up to about 5 webinars a day at one point in time. We're a little less than that now on a wide range of topics. Some of those topics that they talk about are listed here. And these are some of the kinds of engagements that they offer. We offer matchmaking events for you to get contracts with companies. We offer matchmaking events to match you with lenders that are a good fit for your needs. We do matchmaking events to match you with those free counselors and mentors that can help your business, and all kinds of other things. Contracting. Now this is really relevant because today this is really what I'm talking about. When we say contracting, we mean doing business with the federal government. So in my office, I have a team that all they do is help small businesses grow through special certifications and access to federal contracts that other businesses don't get. So in this box down here, you see the 8A and veteran, service disabled veteran, women owned, and hub zone. Those are some of those certifications, and we'll talk just a little bit about that today. But you can see, for instance, we have these 8A firms that we work with. And in the last year, you can take a look here at the kinds of contracts they were able to win. At the very bottom, J.G. Haney got a contract for $4,500 worth of telecommunications. Most of us would be very happy getting a contract for $4,500. But what about Crystal Air Contractors, number 13? They got a $2.6 million contract for some plumbing and heating. What about Marfran Cleaning, number 9? They got nearly $3.5 million contract for janitorial services. Or Wichita Tribal Enterprises, almost $16 million worth of computer facilities. So these contracts are significant and they're meaningful and they're usually multiple year contracts. So that's one of the things we do. And then finally, when there's a crisis, for instance, when we had Hurricane Harvey and you have a natural disaster come to Houston and it affects your business or affects your customers, then we have special programs to help loan money to you and counsel you to help you get out of that crisis. So to give you an example, if you see here in this box for Hurricane Harvey, there was $3.4 billion worth of loans done to help people survive Harvey. $3 billion of that were to homeowners, only $500 million to businesses. During COVID, it's $40 billion just here in the Houston area that we have been able to inject into the local economy to help it thrive for about 550,000 businesses. So that's just giving you a quick background on SBA. Now let me get into this IIJA. There's some important things to know. First, I'm not an expert. Pretty much everything in here you can go find online for yourself. The difference in hearing it from me is that I can give it to you from a perspective that might be more meaningful for small business. I do recommend you contact one of our SBA resource partners and let them help you assess these opportunities and develop a plan. This is who they are. I'm going to come back to this slide, so don't worry about it. And so that you know, I include in here my bibliography of research, about 15 resources that I use to put this together. First thing you need to know, and I think this is very important, how does federal money get distributed? It's very important. So to begin with, give me a second, I need to move something on my screen. There we go. To begin with, Congress appropriates money, and they generally will hand that over to different agencies, federal agencies, such as the Small Business Administration. We then grant that money down to the local level, or we issue contracts to vendors using that grant money. So the important point is it goes from Congress to the federal agency through a state or local agency, finally to the small business. So that's an important point. I'm showing you this slide, and I'm not going to go over great detail, just so you can get an idea that this is a pretty complex thing. This right here, where it says start on the right-hand side, This is where the process starts, and there's a lot of work in this pre-award phase, which then goes into awarding grants, which then goes into managing the grants, and then goes into a final phase of closing down the grants. So there's a lot of work involved, and I'll show you some more about this. I'm doing all of this so you can get an appreciation for the steps that are involved before that money becomes a potential contract that your company could get. Now, most of these look like they're going to go through the United States Department of Transportation. So I want to give you just a quick overview of what it's like at USDOT. They basically they do more than this, okay? But basically they do these two things with grants. On the left, you have what's called a discretionary grant. Those are competitive. So that's where DOT says, hey, we want these things done. Which states or localities have plans that could meet our goals? And if we like your plans, then we will grant this money to you. So it's competitive. Formula grant is where DOT looks at different states and maybe even municipalities, and they say, we're going to grant you a certain amount of money based on your population, or based on how many miles of roads you have, or how many bridges you have. So those are formula grants, and those are kind of automatic every year. Really important to know, competitive grants and formula grants. This matters to your small business, and I'll explain some more as we go. I showed you a diagram a minute ago about how grants occur on the federal level. Well, this is how they occur specifically at USDOT. And I'm not going to go over this in great detail, but just so you understand, it's basically the same. They start with legislation. They go through a pre-award phase. That's what they're doing right now, where they're developing all of the back office information for making these grants occur. Then they go through a number of steps before they can finally award, that's at number 6 here, to the states. And then they go through a process of the post-award and then closing down those grants. So again, I want you to understand there are a number of steps they have to go through first. So at DOT, there are these 9 agencies, or they call them administrations. And it's important for you to understand DOT's focus is keeping the traveling public safe, increasing mobility, and helping contribute to economic growth. They do it with the aviation, they do it through highways, what's called motor carriers, so those are the trucks going along the roads, railroad, transit, which generally means public transportation like Amtrak and that kind of thing, the Maritime Administration, highway traffic safety is a separate one. There's one just for pipelines, and then finally one for the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway. So those are the 9 agencies that will be granting the bulk of this money. Well, actually it won't be the bulk, but it's a lot. I'll show you that in a minute. So now let's take a look at the plan. Now that I gave you a background on how money is granted from the government to the agencies and then down to the states and cities, let's look at this plan as a whole. Really important preface. The Brookings Institution points out in their recent articles, it may take years before we start seeing these projects in our communities. The IIJA, Infrastructure and Jobs Act, is not just a stimulus effort, it's a shift in how and what kinds of projects get done. So the agencies have to oversee this huge flood of money they're going to get, create brand new grant programs, and design new to the world programs. And it takes time to do that. The states and localities at the same time have to identify projects that they need to happen in their areas. As an example, let's just pick the city of Houston, since we all live around the city of Houston or in the city of Houston. There, you can probably think of particular roads or bridges that you could say, yeah, I think that needs work. Or Metro needs more electric buses, or whatever it might be. So right now, all of those organizations are focused on identifying projects so they can try to get this grant money. And all of this happens at the same time we are doing lots of funding to businesses and governments related to the American Rescue Plan under the Biden administration. So these projects aren't going to happen overnight, and it will depend a lot on whether they're a formula grant, a competitive grant, and whether the program existed before or not. So Also from the Brookings Institution, as they point out, formula grants will move a little faster. As we saw, you might remember under the Obama administration, there was the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. In that, part of it was resurfacing roads and doing other kinds of infrastructure improvements, and those happened pretty quickly because they were formula grants. But the Congressional Budget Office points out that DOT only spent 9% of their AARA funding in the first 6 months after the bill passed. And then they spent about half within 18 months. So that also tells you they spent about half after 18 months. So this won't happen super fast. Now, this is just a quick picture I'm showing you so you know the relative size of the projects. There are these, I think, 14 projects here. You see roads and bridges are the largest, and over here in the bottom right-hand corner, safety and research is the smallest. Roughly, there's two categories, transportation and other infrastructure, and I'll go over those for you. They're about 50% of the money each. And if it helps, this graphic shows that. All of this that's in kind of a bluey, greeny color on my screen anyway, on the left-hand side, that's all transportation projects, 283 billion. The right-hand side with all the colors are the other projects. So let's start breaking them down. There are 9 transportation projects for roads and bridges. And you can look over these with me and you can see the amounts. And I have these ranked in order of size. That's the biggest. Passenger and freight rail. So this will be funding to improve rail systems across the country. Public transit, to modernize transit and improve accessibility. Money to improve airports, particularly to reduce congestion and emissions. There's port infrastructure money, and as you know, we have a very large port in Houston. Transportation safety programs to reduce crashes and fatalities, particularly for pedestrians and cyclists. Charging networks for electric vehicles, which I may be buying one in the next couple of years myself, actually this year. Zero or low emission buses and ferries. So 5 million for new school buses that will run on gas or diesel or electric, and 2.5 billion for ferries. We don't have a lot of ferries in our area. Revitalization of communities. So some communities have been split in half by highways, and this money is to help those communities become whole again. So those are the transportation projects. So if one of those sounded very interesting for you and your company or a company you know, then you would want to look into that. Now, then we'll take a look at the other infrastructure. So there's 5 major projects. And I have these ranked. No, I don't have them ranked in size, but I almost do. I thought I did. Internet. So there is $65 billion to try to bring internet to every household and business in the United States. That will be done through the United States Commerce Administration and through the Federal Communications Commission. So this will not be DOT. Power infrastructure, new transmission lines, renewable energy, and research on non-carbon technologies, $73 billion through Department of Energy and the Federal Energy Resource Commission. An emphasis on clean drinking water, replacing lead pipes and dangerous chemicals. That's through the Environmental Protection Agency. Western water storage and resilience for their water system. We all want this, by the way, because most of our vegetables come from the Central Valley of California and Arizona. So $50 billion to fight floods and droughts and be able to make make things better there. And then removal of pollution from water and soil, various pollution that's happened in the past, $21 billion to clean that up. Now that's nationally. Now let's take a look right here in Texas at what's likely to happen. First, we'll look at a quick background. Everywhere, including Texas, has suffered from systemic lack of investment. We've got about 20,000 miles of highway in poor condition in our state, 818 bridges. In the last 10 years, commute times have increased to nearly 12%. Drivers pay $709 a year they shouldn't have to pay from driving on roads in need of repair. 12% of our transit vehicles like buses and trains are past their useful life, and we got a C on our infrastructure report card. We could have got a D or an F, but C is not as good as we all want it to be, right? So remember I told you about those formula grants. This is what should happen probably this year into, well, probably in this fiscal year, 2021 and 2022. We should see highways and bridges, public transportation improvement, airport improvements, emissions reductions, funding for electric vehicle charging network, money specifically to reduce commercial motor vehicle crashes. So when a big truck crashes, for instance, on the highway, and then traffic safety programs. Those 7 formula grants, we should get the funding amounts you see. Note that it's $27 billion for highways and bridges, a huge amount of money. After that, it drops off to significantly less. $3.4 billion for transportation, $1.2 billion for airports, and etc. Now, right now, there are these 10 competitive grants available. So remember, the way I explain that is the state and or cities and counties will develop proposals that they submit to US DOT saying we would like money for these other things. And these are what's being funded. $12.5 billion for economically significant bridges. So we probably have some really significant bridges on our highway system in Houston, particularly over by the Port of Houston, that might benefit from this. What they call mega projects that deliver substantial economic benefits, $15 billion. Resilience of transportation, safe streets, rail improvement, grade crossing safety improvements. There's one near my house, a railroad crossing. I think I'd like them to improve. More money for electric vehicle charging networks, airport terminal developments, because a lot of our airports are aging. Money to modernize data collection systems that are real time so we can look at crashes as they happen and try to figure out how to prevent them. And then money for community-owned utilities to get rid of old bare steel and cast iron pipes. So I've told you a lot already. Let's take a breath. Just to recap, I explained to you how the money flows from the federal government through the federal agencies to the states, who will then either grant it to cities and counties, and or the states, cities, and counties will issue contracts, bid opportunities for small businesses to compete on, and big businesses. So we've gone over that there are some grants that will come right away to Texas. And then there are these competitive grants that right now Texas should be looking at and figuring out how to compete for. Now, going into the future, from this year forward, there should be a lot of activity with this bill. And I'm going to go over now 20 other projects that are going to happen after 2023, and I'm going to go over it quickly. You can see the amounts of the really big ones I put in red, and I bold-faced what they're about. So these 20 projects are coming up. Money to reduce crashes and fatalities, money for surface transportation projects of significance, freight infrastructure projects, which again is something that should really matter to Houston because we have a port and tons of trucks driving on our highways. And I'm kind of losing my voice, I'm sorry about that. More money for zero emission or low emission transit buses to cut down on global warming. More money for bus maintenance facilities, including technology changes for low emissions. Money for high capacity transit projects. So I would love to see Houston get a big chunk of that $23 billion to develop a light rail system throughout the metro. Boy, wouldn't that be nice. And then more money for airport terminal development. Then we've got a big chunk of money for what's called multi-jurisdiction, multi-mode projects of significance. Money to increase resilience of transportation systems. Money to improve the supply chain in our shipping industry, something we're all suffering from right now with all those boats out in the middle of the ocean not able to deliver their goods. Money for passenger ferries, particularly passenger ferries for low emission technology, ferry service in rural areas, more money for replacing bridges, upgrading transit stations, more money for charging of electric vehicles where people live, work, and shop. I told you about Reconnecting Communities program, nationally significant projects that are near a tribal land or a federal land, some more money for transportation safety and for service transportation in rural areas. So I know that was quick, but you can see that there are a bunch of projects that are going to be coming out right away and then will be phased out over the next few years. Now, how can you participate as a small business? And we're about halfway through. We're at 232 right now, and I still have actually quite a lot to cover. You got 4 alternatives the way I see it right now. Depending on your business and what you do, and remember, you might be listening to this webinar for some other person you know that owns a business. You can pursue projects that the federal government might be accepting bids for. That is possible. However, I believe most of the money is not going to be contracted by the federal government. It's going to be granted down to the states. If that's true, then state projects are what you might be most interested in. We're right here in Texas, so something like TxDOT, the Texas Department of Transportation, should be a very important agency to you if you do anything related to all those projects I just went over. And then local projects, for example, to use 4 of the biggest in our area: Harris County, the City of Houston, Metro Transportation, and the Port of Houston. And then finally, and I think this is actually a very smart thing for you to do, is think about being a subcontractor. So really big companies may win the bids for instance, rebuilding bridges, because there probably aren't a lot of small businesses that can build big, giant bridges. So a large company that does road works and that kind of thing will probably get one of those contracts. But when that comes from the federal government, they're going to need small businesses to work for them building that bridge. So I'll tell you more about that. I think this is probably the #1 thing I would recommend you look into. Before I go further, I want to tell you about these guys. They're an important partner to the SBA. It's called the Procurement Technical Assistance Center. A lovely gentleman by the name of Tim Scarborough runs this operation, and they are incredible. They are funded by the Department of Defense to help you pursue federal, state, and local contracts. And I'll give you this contact information again, but I'm bringing it up now because I'm going to put little red stars on the following pages to show you some specific services that they offer that might be of interest to you. All right, and I'll try to point them out when I see them. And then I mentioned these guys earlier, and I will also mention them again. There are 4 organizations in Houston, between them about 250 or so people ready, willing, and able to help you figure out how to put together a plan to attack and win these projects. They work with PTAC as well. They have the technical experience and expertise in going after the contracts. These resources are more of the ones that are experts in business and maybe can help you figure out how you would fund some of these projects or how you would hire the people you would need for the projects. So between them, outstanding resources that you want to use. So let's go ahead, and you see right away there's 2 red stars when I say to participate in infrastructure activity on the federal level. If you think you want to become a contractor to the US government, that's one of the things PTAC does. They have training on their website, and they offer live training to teach you about that. So there are several steps to go through, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them. I just want you to be exposed to them so you know what's involved. To be a contractor to the United States government, you have to have what's called a DUNS number, a Duns and Bradstreet number that identifies you. They're easy to get. You can just Google it and you can get one. You have to determine what your industrial classification code is, or NAICS code. A NAICS code identifies your specific industry, such as highway resurfacing. So you need to figure out which codes you operate in. Then you're going to go make sure you're small. And the way you do that is you go look at the SBA Size Standards, and that's found on our website. So you go there, you look at the NAICS codes for your industry, make sure you're small. Then you're going to register with something called the System for Award Management, or SAM. SAM is the system we use to manage awards. So when there's a contract, we are going to push that contract out to you through that system, and that's where you would submit your bids. So an important note, and this came from the PTAC, is when you do that, make sure that your NAICS, or sometimes we use codes called PSC codes, product classification codes, are correct. Something called your reps and certs are current, complete, and accurate. Now, those are tips from the experts. Then at SBA, we have a special database called DSBS. And that database is of all small businesses that want to do business with the federal government. And the purchasing managers in the federal government that are looking for small businesses to award contracts to will often go to this database, and they'll search for you. And they'll search for who is there in Houston that can supply light poles or restaurant services or janitorial services. So you make sure your keywords are pertinent. Something called the narrative, which explains your business, includes what goods and services you sell, and to make sure you have current references, because they will check them before they contact you. And I know I'm giving a lot of information quickly, so bear with me, okay? Then you might want to look at these certifications that I mentioned earlier, specifically these 4. If you are a woman and you own and control 51% of your business, then you should consider being what's called a women-owned business in the eyes of the federal government. We set aside, which means there are only 4. We set aside contracts for women-owned businesses every year, billions of dollars worth. Those businesses that have either a cultural or economic disadvantage. So that means your net worth is, we don't have to go into the numbers now, but your net worth is not huge. It means that you are either of a minority status or you are someone that doesn't have the same opportunity for advancement as others. For instance, somebody physically handicapped. That qualifies as a cultural disadvantage. So those 8A firms, they also have special contracts set aside just for them. Historically underutilized business zone. If you are located in a hub zone, you can be certified as a hub zone business. And there again, there are contracts set aside just for you by the federal government. Then finally, if you are a veteran, and if you are, thank you for your service to our country. And if you are service disabled, then you may be able to be classified as a service disabled veteran. And then there are contracts set aside for you. And then step 7, become acquainted with what's called the Federal Acquisition Regulations. So those are the regulations we use when we do business with businesses. We have a program in the SBA called 7J. I know we have all these really cool, sexy names, but 7J is terrific because if you are economically or culturally disadvantaged, you can get this training for free. And part of that training teaches you how to be a contractor, teaches you about these certifications I mentioned, and teaches you about the federal acquisition regulations. It's delivered online. It is very high quality. It's very good, and SBA has already paid for it. It's available for you. All you have to do is tell us you want it, and we will make sure that you get it. A few more things if you want to be a federal contractor. I know it's overwhelming already, isn't it? But honest, it's worth it if you decide to go this path. Once you get into SAM, and this is more expert advice from the PTAC, you want to set up what's called saved searches, because every contract that comes available in the federal government is advertised through sam.gov. So those saved searches will mean you will automatically get emails when things come up that might be good for your company to bid on. And those 2 stars means they have a special training program just on doing saved searches. They say at PTAC that you might consider a separate search just for United States Department of Transportation because they will have a lot of work coming out in the future. Develop a capability statement. There should be 2 stars there because PTAC teaches you how to do that. That's a document that explains who you are, and it's written in the way a government purchasing manager likes to read it. Number 10, be sure you can obtain bonding. A lot of these contracts are going to require payment bonds or performance bonds or bid bonds, and you need to make sure you've got bonding capacity. SBA can help. We have a special program that allows us to guarantee a bond for you up to $10 million. And then when there is an opportunity, attend the pre-solicitation conference. You can learn so much there, and it can help you also network with people that might team with you and increase your odds of winning these big contracts. So for DOT only, and I'll just skim over this, you want to go to their website, you want to look at their procurement forecasts, look at their top 10 things they purchased based on NAICS codes, and then become familiar with their do's and don'ts for doing business. Now that's if you think that you could win a contract from US DOT. We're getting close to the end. Now, this is what I think is particularly important, subcontracting. For me, if Tim Jeffcoat's business was going to go try to get some of this business, this is probably what I'd be looking at, because the really big firms are going to be really eager to win a lot of these big contracts. But here's the way it works. If it's a contract funded with federal dollars or from the United States government, it often requires, you can see if it's more than $750,000, it often requires that they have to subcontract a certain percentage to small businesses. Often it works out like I have in the bullet there. 5% would go to a women-owned business. 5% would go to an 8A business, 3% to HubZone, 3% to a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business. And it could be more. In some cases, we ask them to subcontract 23% of their overall contract. So these big businesses that do this construction work will be eager to find small businesses that are certified as women-owned, 8A, HubZone, service-disabled, veteran-owned to work with. Let's say you get that certification. Even if you don't, you can enter yourself in what's called subnet at SBA. And large, what we call prime contractors, can go there and look for businesses that might be a match with what they need. Also, SBA has a directory of prime contractors that are looking for small businesses, and you can go see who those businesses are so you understand which ones you might want to contact. You can review at DOT their subcontracting directory. They have a specific one just for the large DOT primes that have subcontracting plans and are actively looking for subcontractors. And then another part of the SBA, of the government called the General Services Administration also has a subcontracting program to link subcontractors with prime contractors. So you can see that for a small business getting into this space, this could make a lot of sense, because you let the big boys get those big contracts and take all the risk, and then you can get subcontracts from them that can still be really significant in value and help you grow your business. So if you wanted to pursue business in the state of Texas, you see the 2 red stars again. PTAC teaches you how to do this. These are their notes to you on how to do it. You've got to get on what's called the Centralized Master Bidders List if you want to do business with the state of Texas. It does cost $70. If you don't do it, then you won't get notified of opportunities. You want to enter, here's another code. We talked about NAICS codes earlier. They use something called NIGP codes. So you want to figure out your NIGP codes for the industries that you sell to the state. When it comes to TxDOT, you have to select all the highway districts that you want to work in, and then you will only receive notices that match your NIGP codes and the highway districts that you've chosen. Whoops. And then learn to do what's called a one-time search in something called the Electronic State Business Daily. That's where they promote and advertise all their bids. And by searching in there, you are extra sure to find every opportunity for your business. Also, if you can be certified as what Texas calls a historically underutilized business program, it's not the same as the federal one. You can get certified as a minority, woman, or service-disabled business. You can get certified by TxDOT as a small business enterprise. You want to prepare a capability statement that's tailored for Texas. And remember, my friends at PTAC can teach you how to do that. And they can also help you get into that underutilized business program, be able to obtain bonds. And once again, when there is a bid, if there's a pre-solicitation conference, you want to go to it so you can see what to do in order to respond. And then when it comes to the local level, as I mentioned, for example, Harris County, City of Houston, the Port, and the Metro Transportation Authority. It's the same basic approach. Get registered with the ones you want to do business with, get on their visitors list, be sure you can get bonding, watch for opportunities, attend pre-bid conferences. And for example, these links take you in Harris County to that part of their website where you get signed up and you get the notices of bids. Same thing for the City of Houston, who, by the way, you can get registered there as a disadvantaged business enterprise, and that will also be recognized by the state hub program. So you can kind of kill two birds with one stone there. And then I've also linked the same kind of websites for the Port of Houston on how to do business with them as a small business, and for Metro Transportation. So I'm almost at the end, and I know I've gone over a ton of information. You may need assistance with all of this. And I've told you about PTAC, and I've told you about our resource partners. So let me go over that again. PTAC's role is to help you, a local small business, with being able to win these contracts. Their services are generally free. If there is a charge, it's a nominal charge to cover the cost of materials or something like that. So we're talking $30, $50. They're funded by the U.S. Department of Defense, the Defense Logistics Agency. And if anybody here is not from Houston, then you can hit that link and find the PTAC in your area. But if you're anywhere around Houston, this is your PTAC. That's their contact info. I'll wait just a second if you want to snap a photo of that screen, but you'll also get this information from my good friend Paul Gore. And then finally, I want to make sure you know about the Texas Gulf Coast Small Business Development Centers. There are 15 of them in my district. There's their phone number, website. You want to go there. You want to work with these folks. They are free to you. They will help you one-on-one grow your business. Sometimes women prefer doing these kinds of things with other women or in women-centric environments. While there are definitely women counselors and advisors that work at SBDC, WBEA Women's Business Center is focused on women. So is the Greater Houston's Women's Chamber, WBC. Both of those organizations are focused on women businesses, and the WBEA WBC can also assist you with your women-owned certification. And then finally, we've got SCORE Houston. They've got over 150 volunteers that are like you. They have started a small business, they've run that small business, they've been successful, they've done wonderful things. Maybe they've sold it, maybe they just don't go to work anymore because they're successful, and they volunteer their time to help businesses like yours. And then there's my office. You can contact us anytime. I encourage you to go to this website you see on the left and sign up for our email updates. We do a lot of things, as I showed you, and that way we can stay in touch with you. If you ever need us, you can call this number on the right-hand side of the screen, or even better, email us at houston@sba.gov, and you should get a response within a day. Once again, I have a bibliography in there on everything that I researched in order to do this for you. And Paul, that brings me to a conclusion with the presentation, and I'll stop sharing now.
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to add myself to this spotlight. So, hey, thank you so much, Tim. What you just heard is a breakdown of what the bill and how you can, as small business owners, be part of that and be able to have future contracts in that perspective. So thank you, Tim, for sharing that. I want to just ask some questions. We had some questions that came up. Actually, but first, before we ask the question, can you give some examples of successful subcontracting that you've seen because of the whole aspect, this whole subcontracting may be a lot of what small business here can really utilize, if there's any type of examples you can give?
Sure. We work, I mentioned that I have part of my team that all they do is work with what we call these 8A businesses, that people that get this 8A certification, and they work with them specifically to help them grow through federal contracts. So some small businesses say, well, I want to go get a contract with the United States government. Well, sometimes that's a really big task. You saw some of the ones I mentioned earlier, a $15 million per year contract. Not every small business can step up and do a project of that size. We want you to get there, though. So what we have done is we've worked with some of these firms to help them understand that if instead they look at their industry let's use an example. Let's say construction. A lot of government contracts for construction go to a general contractor. And those big general contractors, or they call them GCs, will then organize all the sub-companies, one to do the foundation, one to do the plumbing, one to do the delivery, one to do the food service, one to do the cleanup. So what we have done is we help them understand, if you identify those big companies that are getting a lot of those prime contracts, then you can get relevant, profitable federal experience by working under that prime. That experience is important to the United States government because it shows that you've worked on a government project, you understand what to do, you understand how it works, you just haven't been a prime contractor yet. And then through getting a series of subcontracts, you grow to a point where you say, okay, now I'm capable of going after big contracts. Particularly construction requires bonding usually, and smaller businesses can't always get a lot of bonding money, where the big general contractors usually can get huge bonds. So you're limited in how much business you can take on anyway. So it's not so much that you start small and it takes forever to grow. You saw that some of these projects are just huge projects. So there's a business down in the south part of my district that does administrative services. And they started out doing subcontracts for people like IBM and Accenture and folks like that are doing consulting projects for federal government. Make a long story short, in about a 10-year time frame, they went through $150 million worth of contracts and grew to 500 employees because they started with subcontracting, they proved what they were capable of, they built up enough experience at being a contractor in the federal government to pursue those really big prime contracts, and they're now the preferred small business contractor to NASA.
Thank you. And just what he just said about this whole thing, you don't have to be in constructions or this type of thing to just win and be part of this infrastructure. Everyone needs administration and that perspective. And so definitely you can become a subcontractor to this and be part of this whole initiative of our building our infrastructures here. So thank you so much for that illustration. I had another person who came and asked, if you're thinking about starting a business, can they take advantage of this? Do you have any recommendations of those who want to start business? Is this for them or not?
Well, it could be. It could be. If you are brand new, you're just starting a business, many of these contracts are going to require experience. So if you form a new business from, let's say, 3 people that each have 20 years experience in a particular industry, and I'll just keep using construction as an example, since a lot of this will be construction, then yeah, it's possible that you can still qualify for some of these subcontracts. And remember, this is a 5-year program. So a lot of this money is not going to start flowing until year 2 or 3, and then it's supposed to wrap up in years 4 and 5. So right now would be an excellent time. A lot better would have been a year ago. But if you're starting now, you still could have an opportunity to compete in this. What I would encourage you to do, and I would encourage everybody on here to do this, connect with our resource partners that I mentioned to you. Tell them about your business and that you want to pursue these contracts, and let them help you put together a plan on how to do that. And then the Procurement Technical Assistance Center is very valuable. Once you have that plan, once you have an idea of where you want to go, what you want to do, they can really help. I mean, they can help you hone in on the particular contracts that might be best for your company. They can give you advice on how to pursue those contracts. If you've never done contracting at all, then you don't want to contact the Procurement Technical Assistance Center. You want to contact SBDC or the Women's Business Centers or SCORE, and let's get your basic business plan organized for being able to be someone that does contracting. And let me also add, Paul, I don't want to take up all the time, but this is just the beginning. There's another bill still in Congress. Now, it's not for infrastructure change, but it will also be a large program, if it gets through Congress, that will mean lots of money will be granted from the federal government to the local levels, and there could be even more contracts available. And that's part of the whole point. Not only are we making the roads better and the bridges better and everything else, these other programs will be building up social systems so that they're more robust. And at the same time, all of these are going to lead to lots more jobs and lots more prosperity for a lot of small businesses. So this is just a win-win-win-win-win in a lot of different ways. So if you've ever thought about being a contractor on the state, local, or federal level, this is a good time to say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start doing that. And my number one recommendation is get connected with SBDC, WBC, or SCORE so they can help you lay out your business plan for doing that. And then they will channel you into PTAC when you're ready for PTAC's assistance.
Thank you, Tim. Do you have a little bit more time that we can go over a little bit? We have several questions that just came on. Okay,
I am all yours. I am
Thank
all
you,
yours.
thank you. So the next question that I have, grants. I know there's a big lot of grants, but the city of Houston and Harris County are probably going to bid for that. How can we support them so that we can, get the grants here, then we can now start building?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if I were, let's say, if I had Tim's roadway surfacing company, those guys that pour out the asphalt and that kind of thing, I would be talking to the program managers and purchasing people at TxDOT and at Harris County Department of Transportation, and with the city department that's the equivalent of that. And I would be talking to those people right now, helping them with my knowledge of the area in terms of what kind of projects ought to be done, what my capabilities are to be able to pursue those projects. Now, these are going to be bid, right? So they're not, that I know of, they're not going to be able to just hand you a contract. But the more they know from you, the more decisions they will be able to make that are best for our community, and hopefully will also result in contracts that your company can bid on.
Okay, good. No, thank you. That's a good question. The next question is how to get, I guess, your request. Can you bring that up to the screen for the TPAC counselor? I think there's a little question. They just want to know how can they get a better request for a better or more efficient TPAC counselor. I think they're trying to do. Maybe you have to contact directly to TPAC, and you can give that up. While he's looking for that, another question that came up is, at the promotion company, what would be a good strategy to support businesses that are bidding for these contracts? If there's any type of thing that you can get clarity on that.
No, that's a good point. So if I understand you correctly, so back to my example, if I had a company that does road surfacing and I'm pursuing a bunch of these contracts, when I get them, or when I get to subcontract to one of the big general contractors, I in turn will be buying things. I'm going to need to buy more trucks. I'm going to need to hire more people. I'm going to need to feed them, perhaps. I'm going to need to hire folks to do safety. So there will be, you might not participate in these contracts directly, but based on what your business do, you might be able to work for one of the contractors in some support capacity. So a lot of that should occur as well.
Okay, thank you. The other thing, I want to focus on grants now. If they would like to seek for grants for manufacturing, how would you direct them in being able to try to get a grant for manufacturing if this is something that might be of interest for the government?
Yeah, so in this specific case for the IIJA, this act, this $550 billion act, that I'm aware of, and I could be wrong, okay, but that I'm aware of, none of this money will be granted to businesses or individual entities. They're going to be going to states, who in turn will then subgrant to cities and counties, and then they will issue contracts to vendors. So I believe that's the way, if not all of this, then 90% of this will work. It is possible that in some cases there may be a grant directly from one of these agencies to some business, but that's not likely. Okay. So how can you get a grant for manufacturing or anything else? So every year the federal government grants billions of dollars to small businesses for things that we specifically need. So we don't really do grants for manufacturing. What we will do is we grant money for innovating a new technology, for instance. We might have an idea of some new technology we want, and we're the government, we don't invent technologies. So what we do is we put money in your hands so you can invent the technology for us. And then when you figure out what the technology is, we will buy it, and that pays for the manufacturing. So we do quite a lot of that, and that's managed by the SBA. There are also lots of federal grants that go for a whole variety of different things, including research. So what I would encourage you to do is go to grants.gov, the website www.grants.gov. And grants.gov is where all of the grants in the United States government get administered. So you could go check that out and you might find something that's relevant.
Great. No, thank you for that. Two more questions is, I'm a woman certified owned business and I want to do business with the city of Houston. I'm having a hard time accessing these contracts. Any advice or suggestions with that?
Yeah, I probably have to know a lot more to give good advice on that. Generally, if you have a service or a product that is in demand by the city, then you get set up as a vendor to the city, you get on their bidders list, and then you get notified when there are bids for what you sell, whether that's a service or a good. Now, if you're getting those notices and you're not winning, that's one issue. That means we need to work on your competitive strategy. Another issue is, are you getting the notices at all? If you're never hearing of any opportunities, it could be because your profile is not set up correctly. So the city's not sending them to you because they don't know you exist, even though you put stuff in their database. Another reason could be they just don't buy what you sell. And if they don't buy it, then nothing is likely to happen. Now, a third case, if you have something you think they should be buying and they're not buying it, well, that's easy. You find out who in the city needs to know your product or service exists, go to them, educate them, and then they can go through the budget process and get that added to their budget so that they can actually issue bids for the product or service that you sell.
Thank you. And I just, with following up on what Tim just said, there is an event, Meet the Buyers, from the City of Houston OBO tomorrow event from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's free. It's at George R. Brown. It's live as well as virtual. I just added a link on there to that. For those who want to go, please, this is a great place to network, to understand who the buyers are, and to be able to connect with that. One last question, Tim, thank you so much for your time for extending this grant. If I was, I'm gonna talk about this one example. If I was a hotel developer, I just did construction more just for hotels, for housing and whatnot. How would you suggest for them in utilizing this whole bill, and maybe they can pivot, or things that they can do in doing that whole aspect of it?
Yeah, if I were in the business of building hotels, then you have the core competence to build lots of things. Doesn't have to be hotel, right? It means you understand multi-story construction, you understand site prep, you understand permitting and all those things. So that's wonderful. So what I would do if I were you is I'll give you an example. You can look at the bibliography that I put into this slide deck that Paul will share with you. And a couple of those articles are really good because they drill down into each of those 14 major projects and look at those projects and identify the ones that you think would use your core competence. Just because you've never built let's say, dormitory for people that are building a new bridge somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, doesn't mean you can't build it because you know how to build an apartment building. So you'd have to do some research to find the areas that make sense for your business. That's one thing. And another thing is, because of your core competencies, you can also look for those federal contractors that have a reputation for doing lots of government construction projects and get connected with them to be a subcontractor, to bring your core competencies to them. What will make you most interesting to them is if you're also certified as women-owned 8A, Hub Zone, or service disabled veteran-owned business. If you're not, they may still be interested because even the big general contractors need to distribute their work because they can't do everything. There are ways to do that. Without going into a lot of detail, there's a website called the Federal Procurement Database System, FPDS. You can go to FPDS and you can find out every general contractor that's gotten any contract from the United States government for the last many years. And you can figure out which ones are most important to you and who to contact. It's all right there in that database. It's not the easiest to use, but it is there and it's free. And that's another thing that PTAC can help with. It can help small businesses navigate this whole topic of what part of this big giant bucket of $550 billion do I go after? Where are my best chances of success? Which ones fit best with my company? Which general contractors should I look at to try to team up with? There's some wonderful tools that you can use to help research that. And the great point of having this webinar right now, and thank you, Paul, for thinking of it, is this is the time to do it. You sit down now, you do this homework, and in a month or two, you probably have a really good idea of where you're likely to go. And then you can start putting a plan in place, and that's the point where PTAC starts to become very important to you.
Tim, you are amazing. You're always amazing with wealth of information. I just want to thank you so much for taking your time out to be able to talk to us, to share with us, to give us insight, and even more encourage us. You're a wealth of knowledge, and even more so, all the partners that you shared. Please, those who are attending, utilize them. They're part of the government. They're part of resources. They're part of nonprofits that are here on your side to help you become successful. And we want you to be successful in helping making our whole economy a better place for us to live. So, Tim, thank you so much for your time. And I'm going to go ahead and close out this whole aspect of it. Let me just pull this here. So thank you again for coming today. It's a pleasure to have Tim share with us. And I just want to remind you that we have several events going on, our luncheon tomorrow, as well as our orientation. The other thing is to meet the buyers from the city of Houston, where a lot of the government agencies alongside the city, Port Houston airport system, and much more who are going to be there to talk about how you can be able to do business with them. The website was shared in the chat box, as well as the slides. So I encourage you to really explore what the chamber is all about, and just our community partners and the resources that they have. Please look at the slides, because they have the links that Tim talked about of how to register with the SAM numbers, and even more so the government grants that are available, and how you can pivot and just really look at further resources. I hope that you found this information resourceful. Please check out what the website, our website, to find future events and even more so resources for that. We'll be posting this recording online so that you can review this as well. Thank you for spending this afternoon with us. We just hope that you find this a wonderful time, and hope that we can see you tomorrow at our luncheon as well as our holiday party. Again, this concludes our webinar. Thank you, Tim. Thank you for all of the speakers here, and we hope that you have a wonderful time. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you.